From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan, alongside my partner, the professor, Luigi Rosa Bianca. What's going on this week, Lou?
Matt, today's lessons involve diversification, cash flow, and finding interesting streams of income for your capital. And you and I both know we're huge fans of franchises. There's the business where you kind of roll up your sleeves and you're in the weeds all day long, but there's nothing wrong with having the occasional passive income. And there's nothing better than a really well-run, well-branded franchise to give you that passive income. And today we have the king of non-food franchises, Jon Ostenson. Now, it's funny that we have to qualify that because in America, when you hear franchise, the first thing comes to mind is, well, you know, Mickey D's and Wendy's, etc. But Jon is going to introduce us to the merits of non-food franchising. So, Jon, welcome to the Liquid Lunch Project. I've been looking forward to this all week. Thank you for joining us, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for having me. I love the show and looking forward to a great conversation.
So, Jon, why non-food franchise? Matt and I have a couple of shekels inside our piggy bank. Why do we invest in a non-food franchise?
Yeah, in a nutshell, I think the non-food route, you know, there are a lot of ways to make money. Some are easier than others. And, you know, I think 95% of my clients have figured out that non-food is the pathway that they prefer. My background within franchising has been more on the non-food side as well, in the home and property services space. And so what I found is, as you mentioned, fast food and franchising is oftentimes synonymous. You know, you think about 4,000 franchise brands in the US, roughly half of those are in the food space, but the other half are across a variety of industries, from home and property services. You know, I mean, that $600 billion market, never been hotter coming out of COVID. You've got automotive, you've got health and wellness and fitness, you know, businesses that cater to kids and pets and the aging population. You know, we have B2B plays, all sorts of businesses that you can step into. And versus having a startup, you're able to step in, you know, day one, you know, that path to profitability. And now it's just, let's go execute the playbook. And, you know, you've got the coach on the sidelines, that franchisor, you've got other franchisees to learn from in the system. And so we love what we get to do because we get to introduce a lot of ideas to people that honestly weren't on their radar when they started thinking about business ownership.
So, Jon, in the non-food space, there's a lot of different franchise options, right? So how does one, not knowing really what they want to do, but they just have the idea, I want to make some passive income and own a business, where do they get started and what should they be looking for?
Yeah, no, and that's where I encourage them to work with a consultant like myself. I mean, it's entirely free for my clients. I don't charge a nickel. Get paid by the franchisors on the back end. For them, it's a sales and marketing cost, and none of that gets passed on. So, in any way to my clients. So I like to kind of get that out of the way up front. But no, we work with all the different development groups across the country that are working with emerging brands. And you know, one thing that we found is it's extremely competitive out there right now. You know, in good markets with good brands, they go fast. And so we're always looking at what's coming around the corner, getting to know these franchisors, vetting them, vetting their leadership teams, their financial models, the unique niche and offering that they have within their respective sectors. So ultimately, we work with hundreds of brands. We try and narrow those down to a manageable, several dozen even, to then introduce to our clients. Oftentimes we'll, you know, Matt, hey, down in Orlando, you're interested in exploring franchising. I would ask you a series of questions, really get to know you. And then I also have the perspective of what's resonating with others with similar backgrounds across the country, and you know, what could be a good fit. And we would get on the phone, talk through 7 or 8 opportunities on average, from which to then narrow it down even further to 2 or 3 to actually start the conversation with.
Fantastic. There's a lot that goes into it, thinking about the numbers, the type of franchise, right? So I'm super happy to have you on so our audience can get some insight on that, right? So What are some hot trends that you've been seeing inside the franchise space in the non-food area, right? I know the franchising space usually has its ups and downs, but every so often you see some trends of where people are starting to get more involved and what franchises are growing faster than others. You have any insight here?
Oh, no, certainly. Franchising represents about $800 billion annually within the U.S. economy, and so it's a big player. So when the headlines that you see out there, the silver tsunami, people turning 65, 10,000 people every day. I mean, businesses that cater to that. I mean, that's a great tailwind. Coming out of COVID, there's a desire. You're familiar with the Great Resignation. There's a desire not only to work for yourself, and scratch that entrepreneurial itch, which I mean we're seeing across the board, but a lot of people want to work remote. They don't want to have a physical location. So I'd say definitely a trend towards, businesses that lend themselves to that remote work, home and property services that I mentioned. Within that, kind of the non-sexy businesses are the new sexy. I've joked, things like roll-off dumpsters. I mean, I've got a client just killing it with roll-off dumpsters. I've got another one. It's a Serve Pro water mitigation, mold remediation type business. That's kind of thing that at the cocktail party, you have to be okay being the millionaire that happens to have a niche in the market. But health and wellness, I mean, it's never been more important. Whether we just had a client buy an IV drip concept that, started by a couple of doctors and fights free radicals in the body and reduces heavy metals, all those things that matter. It's the future of medicine. But what's a lot of fun is clients come in typically open-minded and they say, hey, here's the returns I want to get. Here's the time I can put in. Here's what's going on in my local market. What would be a good fit? And 80 to 90% of the time, they ultimately go with something that was never on their radar. I just had a Wall Street attorney outside of Boston buy a gutter business. Crazy numbers on the gutters. I mean, that's what attracted him to it. We've actually done 3 deals with that gutter business in the past 2 months. Nobody had a background in that space. However, they loved, when they put their business owner hat on, they just looked at it through a different lens. So definitely big trends around services. Within brick and mortar, I mean, fitness is definitely picking back up. Again, they care about their kids' education. They care about, trying to advance them. Alternative sports are big. All those headlines you see out there make their way into franchising as well.
Was there a large uptick during COVID looking into franchises and people maybe kicking the tires or even following through after there was a lot of layoffs from these larger corporations?
When COVID first hit, we did see a dip, obviously, for a few weeks there in the deal flow. We never had a week where deals weren't done, but we did see a dip. And then talk about a V-shaped recovery. It has come back stronger than ever. Franchising was hot prior to COVID, but it's only accelerated since, and we haven't seen that slow down a bit. So as an American, I think it bodes well, for our country. There's a positive headline for you, but entrepreneurship is live and well. And I think a lot of it is just educating people. A lot of times people want to be business owners and they say, they think they have to go start up a business, franchising equals food. But once they realize, hey, there are a lot of opportunities out there that could fit with my past skill set. Roughly half of our clients, I'd say, are looking to be owner operators. They make the jump from the corporate world and say, hey, I'm going to go full-time in the business. But half of our clients say, hey, we'd rather go semi-absentee and have a general manager in place from day one and either keep their day job, or many of them are existing business owners. We see a lot of business owners building on that portfolio. Go ahead, Lou.
Jon, have you seen a demographic shift during the pandemic where people once cherished that corporate job, 9 to 5, good pensions, good benefits, and now with this gig economy, people are venturing to the wild, wild west of entrepreneurship?
110%. No, we've done deals in in Q1 with those from their 20s to their 60s. I mean, certainly the late 30s to early 50s, I'd say, is where most of the deals are being done. But we see it across the board, and that interest level, I think. So many, again, questioning the path they're on. You also have record levels of cash sitting on the sidelines. Stock market's up here, interest rates down here. All the talking heads on TV would say, there are only so many good real estate deals to be had. Where else are you going to invest outside of Bitcoin from an alternative standpoint? And with business ownership, they're waking up to the fact you can get cash flow going. You can, write off expenses you can't as a W-2 employee. And you're also able to build an asset that has potential value down the road. So
John, I think I heard you say that franchises are an investment alternative to Bitcoin. Can I quote you on that?
I'm an all the above. I was telling someone yesterday, more than half of my clients invest in real estate as well, and I invest in real estate myself. I invest in crypto, so I'm an all of the above kind of guy.
So walk me through, somebody purchase a franchise, and you've been doing this for a while, so I'm sure you've seen this. What's the exit strategy look like on these franchises, and what do they have to do if they want to retire themselves after purchasing one?
Yeah. Well, we actually last week completed our third acquisition in the past 3 months of other franchisees within one of our franchise systems, where we're a franchisee and now we're buying out other franchisees. So there is a natural exit potential of other franchisees potentially buying you out, if you come to terms. In some cases, the franchisor will buy back franchise locations, turn them corporate. I mean, Pods, that's a great example of one that did just that. So we see private equity flowing into franchising in a massive, massive way. Just Google recent franchise acquisitions. You'll get quite a list. Typically, private equity is coming in at the franchisor level. However, you do see at times a large swath of franchisees will be purchased by a boutique PE group. From an exit standpoint, there are different options. I mean, you can go out to the open market, you can work with a broker. One thing that people oftentimes overlook is the value seen in that resale by the potential buyer. So there was a study done recently by the Titus School of Franchising where they looked at 2,000 acquisitions that took place across I think it was a 20-year period in like-kind industries across a wide variety of industries, franchised and non-franchised. What they found was the multiple paid for franchised exits was actually 1.5 times non-franchised for like-kind businesses. And so that was really eye-opening to a lot of people to realize, hey, I really am building an asset that I'm going to be able to sell down the road.
Would you recommend starting a franchise from scratch or actually going in and purchase one on the resale market?
Again, either or. There are pros and cons to both. On the resale side, I'd say oftentimes there aren't too many resales available in your market. So you may be limited. And I do have clients that say, hey, I want to focus on resales. I mean, that's probably about 10 or 15% of the business we do. Most are new to the market. The pros and cons, whether it be a franchise or an existing business that you're looking to acquire, entrepreneurship through acquisition is a popular concept right now. And I was just talking with a client in California a few minutes ago. Going in, it's nice, when you have a business already running, because maybe you're cash flowing, from day one, you've got a team in place, some brand awareness in the market. On the flip side, you're probably paying a multiple, a good bit higher than if you were to open up a franchise location out of the gate. You are paying for that. And the awareness in the market can be a good thing, or it can be a bad thing. The team can be a good thing, maybe a bad thing. But what I encourage people to do is really dig under the hood and understand, owner's discretionary and quality of earnings and all of that goes into a resale, because a lot of times you do step in and you don't fully understand how allocations were being made from a financials standpoint. I see that time and time again with clients. What was originally looked great on paper, once they dug in, it wasn't quite what it seemed. So that's just one thing to kind of take note of.
And when it comes to franchising, right, are you seeing a lot of people going out and emptying out or converting their older 401ks to IRAs and purchasing the franchises that way? Or are people tending to go out and get more financing for franchises these days?
Yeah, I'd say our average deal size is between 150 and 300. So you're not talking, multi-million. We do have some that scale up a good bit from there, but 150 to 300. And about a third of our clients are using debt. Oftentimes SBA loans, Express or 7A loans. We have about a third of our clients that are self-funding right now, just given, again, the cash on the sideline. And then we have about a third of our clients that are using either a retirement plan, self-directing it through what we call a ROBS program with your 401k or IRA, or they're using a portfolio loan. This is something I personally do because it's an arbitrage opportunity. I borrow against my brokerage non-retirement accounts at 1.5%, flip it into real estate lending. I'm doing it 10 to 12%. It's just definition of arbitrage right there. So we do see some clients doing that as well.
That's amazing.
So John, let me ask you this. My analogy to entering into a franchise has always been you're jogging and running rather than starting at a crawl and learning to walk from your own inertia. Um, what do you advise newbies to the franchise world in benchmarks? What should they be looking for, whether it be on the franchisor's licensing fees, whether it comes from, you know, SOPs? Like, what are the critical benchmarks that you must have when entering into a deal?
Yeah, no, great question. And you know, I like your analogy. I would say, you know, I often say you're starting on third base instead of first base. You know, you are, you know, not trying to figure out product market fit on day one, because, you know, it is there. You just have to, you know, execute against the plan. You know, having been a franchisor where I was able to see a lot of franchise owners across North America, you know, all operating the same business, but sometimes performing at different levels. You know, it sounds cliche, but those that were our top performers were inevitably those that were following the system, the ones that, you know, bought in and said, hey, I'm going to follow this playbook. And, you know, they made fewer mistakes. They made more money. Some of what we look at when analyzing option A versus B versus C when it comes to franchises, you know, first off, you go in eyes wide open. Franchising is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. Every franchise has what's called an FDD, or franchise disclosure document. Within it, there are 23 different items. Your item 19 would be the financial representations. So what's the average owner out there doing? So you're going to get much more than a back of the napkin pro forma into what the business capabilities are. You're also able to do what we call validation during the process, where you get to talk to other owners in the system about their experience. So our goal through all the different steps that we go through is you go in eyes wide open into making the right decision for yourself. And some of the things that we look at, to your question, are, you know, the background of the franchisor. You know, if they have great industry experience but haven't been in franchising very long, I want to see that they brought in other franchise expertise around them, because I do think it's a different animal, and I want to see that there's someone in leadership that understands that franchisee dynamic. You know, we obviously look at the profit model. You know, there are a lot of ways to make money. You know, sometimes the juice is worth more squeeze with this one versus this one. We look at, you know, the past history. You know, how are other owners doing? How fast did they ramp up? You know, what is your competitive advantage? I mean, we've got a few franchises in blue collar industries that bring proprietary technology, in some cases even patented technology, to bear. So, you know, what does that local market need? You know, are you saturated with anything, or is there a big opportunity? Do you have young families moving in? Is there a housing boom? You know, kind of what's that path forward, and how do we best address? And what are your interests? You know, do you want to get involved in the Chamber of Commerce and do a lot of grassroots type work, or do you want to be very standoffish and you know, say, hey, I'm going to outsource everything? So we walk through all of that as we're analyzing the different options.
Now, what's the other side of the coin? What don't you like about the food franchise industry that makes you geared towards non-food?
Yeah, you know, what I personally feel that it's a heavy capital investment to open up most fast food joints. Now, if you're getting in on a Jimmy John's, I mean, it's very predictable how you'll do. However, I do think there's a little more risk in food, just from a trend standpoint. You also have you have to have a large team. You have to, you know, carry inventory that's perishable. And so to me, when I think about the criteria list of what I look for as an investor myself, it just doesn't align as well as some other industries do. And frankly, 95% of my clients aren't interested in food. 5% are passionate about it. 95% are not. My background's not food. And so I really, by ignoring that large segment, it allows me to really go deep with all these other opportunities and really specialize.
Speaking of backgrounds, now that you've taught us about the how and the what, tell us about the who. So Jon, how did you become such a guru when it comes to non-food franchises?
You know, honestly, I stumbled into it. You know, had a great run in the corporate world and got to do some neat things, you know, for public companies. I had a desire to do something a little more entrepreneurial. For me at the time, it meant stepping into a role with Shelf Genie franchise system, large, you know, Inc. 500 business here in the U.S. Served as their president. That was my first step into franchising, and it really opened up my eyes to, hey, there's so many more ways to make money out there. And I saw, you know, people thriving across our brand, and ended up partnering with the founder. We spun off, we bought into franchises, brought in other partners, bought into other franchises. And, you know, we've been able to put good people in place that allows us to focus on what we focus on now, which is the consulting side, while we have passive revenue streams from these franchises.
Where do you see the future of franchises going, both from a market perspective and also, let's call it from like a socioeconomic perspective? Is the future in North America the franchise model?
I think in North America and really around the world, I mean, I do some international speaking, and we've just had huge receptivity in a lot of countries. And, there's some brands that we're bringing to the US and some brands that we're taking from the US and going elsewhere. So it's an exciting time. I don't directly take companies through the process of franchising, but I always am happy to jump on a phone call and talk to them about, the pros and cons. I mean, a lot of businesses are looking to franchise. I mean, we see just a huge number across different industries. They're saying, hey, this is a better path to scale. Obviously, if private equity likes franchising, it sets them up for a good exit down the road. But ultimately, they're using other people's money who have skin in the game, acting as owners that know their local market. I mean, it's a really neat model all the way around when it's done right.
Let's touch on that for a second.
Yeah.
Private equity does like franchising, but again, they're not going to come in and buy out one franchise. So explain to the audience a little bit how that works.
Right. So no, typically it would be done at the franchisor level. With private equity, I get calls multiple times a week from different groups. They're saying, hey, Jon, what are you seeing out there? What franchisors do you like that might be right for coming in and purchasing, be able to invest in? On the local level, Matt, there are multiple options on the exit side. Some people hold these businesses for a very long time. Some will sell to another franchisee, maybe in an adjacent market. In some cases, you do have the corporate buyback option. And so there are a lot of different options. I mean, of course, you can put it out there on Biz Buy Sell. You can work with a broker network. Does that kind of get at what you're asking?
Yeah, exactly. It's where I'm at. So we spoke about a lot of the benefits of franchising. I definitely see there's benefits in there. You get a proven system, processes in place. Depending on the franchisor, the amount of help that they can provide to you can make you move at the speed of lightning, right? But let's talk about the downside of franchising a little bit, right? Because it's not all rainbows and unicorns, so to speak, right? I've heard a lot of great stories, but I've also heard a lot of bad stories, right? And a lot of it stems from people after a while getting involved with a franchise where the franchisor is not doing what they said they were going to do in the beginning, and they're still paying all these royalties out the door. So have you come across cases like that? And what's the best way to handle a situation like that if you are the franchisee?
Yeah, no, I mean, just like any industry out there, when you've got thousands of companies represented, you're going to have some that aren't cut out in the same way with others. So no, and so two things I would point out. One, I do think, I always tell my clients, if you think it's going to take 10 hours a week, it's probably going to take 15 hours. I mean, nothing is easy, as turnkey as possible. I mean, you've got to have the right general manager to really make it semi-absentee, and the first one you hire may not be the right one. So, it can be an iterative process. Do expect a little more work than you probably planned going in. I mean, it's just the nature of it. But as far as bad franchises go, I mean, that's where the vetting, that's where the work. I mean, the things that we're looking for proven brands. If they're very early and only have a couple of locations, then it's a pretty stringent checklist that we use before presenting those brands to our clients. In a case where things do go south, I mean, more oftentimes my experience has been it's more at the franchisee level, and they're looking for excuses and pointing fingers, and then maybe that they're certainly there are exceptions to that. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. So with that, right, being said, when you're a franchisor, right, and you're consulting your clients on which franchises to buy, right, is there a number of franchises you want to see the franchisor owning or operating before you would even recommend that situation?
Yes and no. Answer is it depends. Right now there's we've got companies who work with as few as 15 locations, but they check all the boxes. I've got one that I helped go through take through the franchising process recently. It's a flooring business. Their average first year revenue, and when I say average, that's what they're doing, their corporate location, $2 million in the first year, $6 million in the second year, $10 million in the third year has been their run rate. Now, you don't have a ton of franchisees to talk to, but they've established themselves. They've got the agreements in place with the big flooring providers, And I tell my clients, let's go in conservative because they don't have a large sample size. Let's assume you do 1/3 as well as they have. Is it still an attractive business? And a lot of them would say it is. So no, we work with franchises that have hundreds of locations. We work with those that have several dozen locations. The ones that have fewer locations, obviously, you get the pick of territory. You get a little more hand-holding. There's some benefits. You may get larger territories because we can negotiate that going in. So there are some benefits. The downside is, they haven't seen every possible situation. You may be the first mover in a new marketing vehicle, that you're testing out. So, one other thing that I'd say, as far as the negative, I do have clients that are too entrepreneurial, and I'll tell them that. I'm a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization. We've got a lot of clients within EO. For some of them, they built up their own businesses, sometimes multiple businesses. In some cases, they say, "Hey, I want to buy a franchise," and I say, "I don't see you staying between the lines. I don't. I think you're too entrepreneurial." Others say, "Hey, I've been there, done that. I love the idea of not having to recreate the wheel," and so then they'll buy franchises. So more and more, we're seeing that portfolio strategy, even of franchised and non-franchised businesses, where you get some synergy on the back end, some shared resources, and potentially some referrals on the front end.
Jon, now that you've got our audience chomping at the bit to buy a franchise, where does one find these humming franchises? Are there publications? Are there websites? Give us some tips and where we could locate these opportunities.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, there's plenty of resources. You can do some Googling. You can look at the Entrepreneur 500 list. I mean, there are different lists out there, but you have to understand what's going on behind the scenes. And so I had a client recently. She said, "Why are you showing me this brand? I don't even see it on the top 500 list." I said, "Well, that's because they're tired of paying the PR to get on that list. They've sold hundreds of locations. They no longer need that." But what I found is that oftentimes clients will say, "Hey, there's only 5 locations of this franchise." I'm like, "Yeah, but they've sold 75 licenses and those are all in the process of opening. And let me tell you about the leadership team." So you really have to understand what's going on behind the scenes as well. So that's why, again, no cost to work with us. And yet we can guide you through. We've already done a lot of the vetting to put the best opportunities in front of you. So I'd say that's probably the best path. But if you want to do it on your own, just make sure you're asking all the right questions during the process.
It looks like all franchise roads lead to Jon, Matt.
Yeah. So I have a question about that, right? So you sell 5 franchisers. There's 75 licenses out there, right? So is there a stat or is there a number? Because I know it happens more often than I thought that somebody will buy these franchises and never open them up.
You do from time to time if they bit off more than they can chew, especially capital intense ones. But a good example here. 2 years ago, Scott Marr, founder of Koala Insulation, put together a great offering, $52 billion market, blue collar, highly fragmented, doesn't have a really a national player. They've got marketing, call center, technology, everything set up, turnkey. But they had 5 locations and they were ready to enter growth mode. And so oftentimes franchisors will be like, "All right, we're ready to go." And when that happens, because he had a great model, he's now got 250 locations, of which at least 75% are already open. And this is in under 2 years. And so it is definitely possible. There's one I'm excited about right now. And this is just an example. I'll say the financials on this one are a little stronger than our average. It's a fence company, Fence and Rail, 31 locations today. They're saying, "Hey, let's go enter growth mode." Well, they've got national accounts with Home Depot and Lowe's that their franchisees are able to draft off of. They do owner operator and semi-absentee. Average first year revenue across their 30 franchise owners, 1.7 million. Average second year, 2.8 million. Average third year, 3.5 million, at roughly a 30% bottom line margin.
And what is the buy-in on something like that?
150 to 200,000 all in, including working capital.
Including working capital. Wow.
So that ROI, we don't usually see revenues of 1.7, 1.8 million in year one. That's an anomaly. But I've now got 10 clients talking with them because I'm trying to position them first in line within their given markets for the opportunity. And so every now and then you get a flyer like that just has an incredible financial model. But even I mentioned
30% net margin.
Yeah, they do a lot of the manufacturing in-house. So they're able to provide 20 to 30% savings to their owners versus buying at the open market rate. And they spend less on marketing because they've got the leads from Home Depot.
What areas do they focus in?
As far as
as far as the locations where the franchises are right now?
Yeah,
Are they national?
they're national. There's 14 states that are registration states where it takes a little bit longer to get approval to sell franchises in those states. It's California, Washington, New York. I mean, the usual suspects.
Interesting.
So they make
How
you
it's
jump
those
through.
states.
So they make you jump through a couple more hurdles, but so we're always waiting for those to open up. You never know when that's going to happen, but no, I mean, Florida is entirely sold out. Sorry, Matthew. I think Tallahassee's the only open market there, but I was working with some clients in Texas this morning. We still have some good availability there, really across the board. And again, where we see people buying franchises, I mean, I've done deals in California and New York in the past month. However, it's the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Texas. I mean, that's where people are moving. That's where we see just tons of economic activity taking place.
It's not just in the franchising space; it's in every single
Exactly.
space. The southeast, and Texas. I mean, is just booming.
Yeah.
Everybody's moving there. Everybody wants to be there, and let's hope it stays this way. Right? Moving forward. So, Jon, you had a couple different careers, right? So you went from corporate America, and then you got in the franchising space. What's Jon 3.0 look like? Where are you going next?
Yeah, we've got a good thing going. I've got a book coming out in Q3 on non-food franchising. We're doing some different video series around that. Right now we're making a good living, and I'm able to deploy that into semi-absentee and in some cases totally absentee investments. So I'm, whether it be real estate lending or buying into franchises or obviously stock market, I mean, we're pretty diversified, but it allows me the freedom and flexibility in the coming years to set my schedule and decide, how much work and how many clients I want to take on. And, but I love doing what I'm doing, just getting to help a lot of people. So I don't see veering too far from what I'm doing today. I mean, just the case studies that I could share with you guys of, client after client. And, we had one client where it didn't work out. He got 3 months in and said, hey, this is going to be a little too much work. He lived 3 hours outside the market. I mean, there were some explainables around it, but by and large, I mean, our clients are thriving, coming back, buying additional locations. So we have a lot of fun with the whole matchmaking, introducing them to ideas they never thought of.
Jon, why don't you let the audience know where they can find you on the World Wide Web, so to speak?
Yeah, come out to frambridgeconsulting.com. As a first step, sign up for our monthly newsletter. If you sign up, we'll send you a copy of the book once it's released as well. Connect with me on LinkedIn. We put out great content on a daily basis there on LinkedIn. But yeah, would love to even jump on a 10-minute call, just chat about what we discussed today and see if I can help in any way.
Awesome. Jon, before we let you run, we want to be respectful of your time. There's one question that we ask everybody on the show, and I'm about to ask you. So I'd love to hear it. So what does success mean for Jon Ostenson?
Yeah, there have been seasons of my life where I would have defined it differently, but now I'm starting to get a little gray in my hair here in the early 40s. And, I harken back to the wisdom I was taught along the way. And, it's about stewarding what we've been given and trying to be a blessing to others. So, that can be with our time, with our resources. I've got 3 young kids even. So, I got to make sure I take care of that before I take care of others. But, I meet with a lot of young guys and, provide some pro bono mentoring to them. And, maybe there's a nugget in what I share from my own experiences that they're able to run with. But, I think it's being able to give back and, be well-rounded and fulfill the different roles that I play.
Jon, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate you being here. And guys, that's a wrap of the Liquid Lunch Project. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of the Liquid Lunch Project.